So thank you for joining me today. I want to introduce to everyone Dee Borgoyn. She is a consultant, trainer, coach, and speaker who is dedicated to building diverse and inclusive workplace cultures. She was born with a disability and is a lifetime advocate for fairness and equity for all. She was active in creation and passage of the ADA, and she has a certificate of mastery in diversity, equity, and inclusion from SDS Global Enterprises. So again, thank you so much for joining me for this interview. I wanted
Thank you for having
to,
me.
yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to start by having you tell us about your journey of getting into diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
Well, I would say that it's been lifelong. I was born with a disability. I have one hand. I don't say I have just one hand. I say I have one hand and you have two hands. So all my life I was different. I've been different, just and looked from a little bit different view than maybe other people. And when it came time for me to go to college, I went into special education. So again, that was another type of group to become a teacher. There were no teaching jobs. So I went to work for the State Vocational Rehabilitation Division, which is the agency that works with people that have disabilities that are interfering with their ability to get a job. So I worked for them for 5 years. And then I actually took over, or I started a federal grant program that was under the Nevada State AFL-CIO. And that was interesting. And the program was called Jobs for the Handicapped. That was back in the days when the terminology was handicap rather than person with disability. And I did that for 5 years. I placed so many people, and of course, I was exposed to a really wide variety of disabilities and types. And then I had placed so many people with a company called Spiegel, which was a catalog company, that they asked me to come and work for them as their HR manager. So back in the day, I went to work for them, and that's how I got into human resources, and that's how I grew in that. I did a tremendous amount of hiring for them. And I saw the other side of the employer bringing the employee in. Um, then I kind of went through some things in my personal life that I wanted to work with something with more of a personal effect. And I say that because my husband fell 23 feet off a scissor lift. So he was hurt and I was at the hospital all the time. And then my daughter, who was 12 at the time, had bone cancer. So I was at the hospital all the time. And all of a sudden, whether or not that customer got their moo just really, it really didn't resonate with me anymore. And so many people thought that I worked at the hospital. They would ask me for directions and things that I thought, I want to work in HR, but I want to work in something that means something. So ever since then, I've been in healthcare HR, and then I gravitated specifically towards the senior living aspect of healthcare. And again, I was involved in the creation of the ADA because I came from the state of Nevada and they wanted me to come out and represent them in DC. So I did that. And I've also lived in third world countries, and Turkey being the main one. And I've been exposed to all kinds of different cultures. When you're raised in the military, you have a whole variety of people in your life, and you move around and you're always meeting new people. So I always have been in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I've always been the champion for the underdog and making sure things are fair for people. And finally, after all that, I went and got I went to Shirley Davis Systems, and she had put together a mastery program for DE and I did that. So I finally have something that says she are one, because I thought, well, maybe there's something, for me to say that I'm as they say, expert in DEI. Maybe I'm not. Maybe there's something I don't know because I've never had the training.
Mhm.
So then I did that, and it just has been it's been in my DNA since I was born, but my career and my life have supported it and continued to push me in that direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Yeah,
for
it's been
that.
a real journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So you talked about having the disability from birth. How do you feel like that specifically impacts the work that you do now?
I think going back to what I said about always being different, I've always been just a little bit different. And, I have one hand and people have, it's funny about a disability. I think that a disability is only as limiting as the person view of it, being my view of it. And then here's the other part, the other people's view of it,
Mhm,
how
mhm,
they view it and how they receive it. So it's all about attitudes. And uh, real quick story, my grandfather was a medical doctor and he was there when I was born. And of course, they hesitated to bring the baby to the mom and because there was this difference. And my mom was all worried. Well, finally they brought me to her and he was there and he told her, isn't it beautiful that God knew just who to give her to?
mm,
And I thought, that's great. And then he also pointed out to me later that in the Webster's dictionary, a handicap is a race or a contest where an artificial disadvantage is placed on a superior contestant to equalize the chances of winning. So
yeah.
it has shaped my life. I look through a different lens. I am received through a different lens. And because of that, I'm a real observer of people and their attitudes. I feel like I can size people up pretty quick. This is going to sound strange, but I feel I can size people up pretty quickly by their reaction to my disability,
Mhm,
if that
mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
There's people who are very comfortable with it and open, and there's the people that um, just totally ignore it. And then there are people who are really, really cruel about it.
Mhm.
So I can size you up pretty quick.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I wanted to ask, what has been your favorite DE&I project that you've ever worked on and why?
Mm. I haven't really worked on a specific project like from start to finish where it's a strategy thing.
Mm,
I have done, I would say the funnest one I've done in my role as a trainer and consultant is a 2-day on-site training uh, for a state parks association.
oh,
And
yeah.
they had a business, what is it called? A business, um, BG business group within their organization. And they brought me in to do the first day was training on diversity, equity, and inclusion as a whole. And then the second day was teaching them to present what I had presented.
Mm,
So they could go out and be ambassadors for uh, the effort and the strategy that the parks had. And so that was fun. But really and truly through my career, DE&I has just been threaded through everything I do.
mhm, for
And
sure.
it wasn't called that.
Right, right, absolutely. And then do you have maybe that's the example, but do you have a favorite client that you've worked with and what did you love about that client?
Oh, I'll be diplomatic and say that I don't have a favorite client.
Okay.
I I I work with all different kinds of clients,
Mhm,
primarily healthcare, but a lot of other ones because of my retail background and my call center background. And I will say the type of client I love are the ones who they are continually growing.
mhm,
They are always trying to get better. It's not they're calling you in, which they do when they have a problem or
mhm,
something that needs to be fixed. But I love working with the ones who, and maybe you can relate to this, who have an open mind and want to hear what your thoughts are, and
mhm.
they're willing to hear anything, and they can take the bad news with the good news. There's always both, and aren't just the ones that are just doing it because someone said they had to do it, and you can tell that. are really difficult to work with. But I love all my clients. I really do.
That's awesome. And you've talked about working in healthcare and nursing homes, and you're an aging services professional. Tell me a little bit about ageism and how you see that pop up in the workplaces. And then what do you think employers can do to prevent it?
Ooh, I'll answer it backwards. I think to prevent it, it needs to be brought out on the table and discussed as a factor of diversity. Um, what I'm seeing is that uh, either employers are forcing people out, formally or informally, pushing people out, um, or the older worker themselves is growing in their fear. They get more and more afraid that something's wrong with them, or maybe they have gained a disability in the recent years, or maybe they're hearing, or they don't have the stamina they do. And boy, these young people are just walking all over me in this technology. Like me, I'm 63, and if I get a project, I always have to learn some new piece of technology, and that's 10 times harder than what the project is.
Yeah.
But people get afraid, and because there's not that communication connection, they would rather quit than fail. And I don't know if you've read it, but it's interesting. IBM in September of last year got a letter from the EOC because someone had complained about ageism and favoritism, and they got a letter that was very specific, stating that uh, they were doing mass layoffs, and about 85% of the people that they were laying off were older. And there was actually documented verbiage from the top people saying we want to reduce our percentage of older workers and replace them with, and they had a title for it, early professional hires, EPH.
Wow.
So I do see that. And I've seen in another company where I worked that, and this was a large not for profit. Some of the people who were at the very top, Jocelyn, were the CEO or the COO or the director of HR, have been there literally 28 to 30 years. And so they've had people working under them that in the old days, there was like this progression.
Mhm.
These people have worked under them all these years, hoping that well, of course, the next step would be that when Susie retires, that will be my position. But what I've seen, and some of the people involved in this have come to me and complained at that company, is that when it comes time to replace them, what they've been doing is grooming the millennials. And in one case, they were doing it intentionally, where they were having
Mm.
special group sessions for millennials, and telling them how to grow and telling them what they needed to get that job, and practically promising it to them. And the people, I think it's, who is it, Generation X, that's between the boomers and the
Yeah, yeah.
millennials, wherever that generation is. I'm a boomer. That middle generation is being like jumped over
Right.
to satisfy and bring, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who are younger. I mean, it's, we all deserve to be there, but
Yeah.
uh, it needs to be brought out on the table and realized and recognized as an issue, because there's so much brain power and wisdom in people. Not all older people, but there's so much there. And I feel like where people may think that people that are older are less productive than the younger workers, when the younger worker comes in and you train them, they're at that same level on the other side of the bell curve as that older worker. Their
Mm.
skills are just different.
Yeah.
There's only that middle part where people are all like at the peak of their knowledge and skills and experience, but it needs to be talked about more. Um,
For sure.
we're really early in the boomer uh, swing, and people don't want to retire at 62 or 63 or 65.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
there
I
was the
think
company that I went into that had wanted me to look at their policies and procedures, and they had been around for over 100 years, 150 years.
Mm-hmm.
And this was just a couple of years ago. They still had a policy on the books for mandatory early retirement that
Oh,
was from the 60s.
oh my
And like,
gosh.
so employers need to look at their policies.
Yeah, for
Take
sure.
a really, I know where there's a lot of talk about all different kinds of diversity, but make sure that the policies aren't, that you don't have something in there that's, it was typed, you know, on a, not even a Selectric typewriter, just a, probably one of those old ones you see from movies. So it was really old.
Interesting.
Look at your
Yeah,
policy.
I
Have you run into
see.
that?
Well, I haven't seen that specifically, but I see people use language like young employee in written things. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a handbook, but I think it's really interesting when we think about, okay, what is a young employee? Do you really just mean they're like new at this career? Because I could switch careers right
Right.
now, right? And be
Yeah.
the same experience level as somebody graduating college and starting in something new. And so eliminating that age-related language, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
And the other piece of that is recently a friend of mine who does a lot of data analytics and surveying things in the HR space had posted an article and a study about how experience doesn't actually relate to job performance as much as we think it does. And so it's really about what are the actual skill sets that we need for a job. Just because someone
Yeah.
has 10 years in something versus someone having 5 years, we don't necessarily see a difference in their performance once they get hired into a
Yeah.
job. So
Mm-hmm.
being more open to who
Yes.
we're looking at for these roles, and it's challenging because there is this mindset set around it for sure.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know job descriptions have always been like the I'll call it the Achilles heel. It's like this document that gets ignored and put away in a file and barely discussed unless you go to court. And then everything that's in there is like gospel. So for, I think as a human resources field, and speaking of diversity, I believe that I don't like groupings. I don't like labels. Every single person in this world that has ever lived and ever will live is diverse, is unique. No two of us, whether we satisfy whatever category we satisfy, no two of us are ever the same. And just because someone's a woman, two people are women, it doesn't mean they have the same experience. If two people are African American, it's all so unique to us that when we take a job description and we say, okay, if you get this degree and you have 5 years experience, not 4 years and three quarters of a year, you
Right.
know, we've make it so. Uh, I think we restrict ourselves because people have a hard time making decisions.
Yeah.
So they want something that will back them up. But so many good people, I think, that have maybe don't have that exact experience get eliminated. And then other people get put in just because they've sat in that chair for 5 years and now they're qualified.
Right.
It's it's tougher though. It's tougher when you start using your head.
Yeah, you got to slow
In
down a little
HR, we
bit.
kind of try to balance that. We want
Right.
you to use your head, but we also have to create the what do they call it? The box.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
need to we need to dull the lines on the box for everybody, and then we won't get so involved in what we did to a certain person because we'll be dealing with an individual every time.
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
For sure.
We're
Definitely.
all so special. We're all special and unique. And people fascinate me. They always have interested me, what they do and why they do it and how they do it. And um, it's truly a joy. I know people say, "Oh, I love working with people," but I love figuring out what makes people tick. And I believe all people are good. They may do bad things because they've justified somehow in their head that it's okay, but all people are good.
Yeah,
And HR is just the balancing beam.
for sure. Well, I think that segues perfectly into my next question for you, which is about the book that you wrote. So you wrote a book called 28 Ways of Compassion, and it's a guide for
Yes.
leaders. So tell us more about that. And I also want to hear about what inspired you to write a book.
Oh, I have it right here. I
Oh,
have one
awesome.
right. Let me make
Let's
sure.
see it.
Right here, I have a signed copy. 28 Ways of Compassion.
Awesome.
Um, I guess it's a combination of things. In my HR career, when I look at when I've been involved in a big issue, a big issue, every time I've drilled down to the bottom of that issue in an investigation, I can tell you that there was a moment somewhere where somebody could have been a little more compassionate and
Mhm.
this wouldn't have blown in. I mean, it starts this big and then it grows and it grows and it grows. If someone had shown a little more compassion, and I realized that, so I had all these years of working with problems, and I realized that uh, people didn't, when I studied it, there wasn't really a definition of compassion. All the things I saw were really mushy, and they were they were talking about pain and suffering, and being thoughtful with people that were going through that. And for me, it started to be this idea that it's not about feeling sorry for people. It's not about suffering and pain. It's also in joy. If someone's joyful and you're ignoring that and not sharing that with them, that's not compassionate. So I just started thinking about it, and it grew over the years, and I couldn't find anybody talking about it. So I thought, well, I'll write a book, because I started identifying, what just happened over there at Denny's. There was a magic moment there. What happened? And I watched things in healthcare, and I studied nurses who burned out and stayed
Mhm.
versus, or worked for a place for years and stayed, and how they were able to remain compassionate despite all their years. And then there's also that category of ones that burn out and they either stay, which is really bad.
Mhm.
You don't want to have a burned out nurse taking care of you, or they burn out and they leave, which is also bad because we need the nurses. So
Right.
all of that combined, and I started coming up with uh, 28 specific things that I noticed over the years. And then I have a wall back here, and I had 4 rows of 7, because I wanted to come up with 28, because that's what people say is the start of a habit, because
Oh,
compassion is
yeah.
a habit. It really
Okay.
is. You have to practice it. And rearranging the chapters on the wall with the tape and all this different stuff. And then I read that to make it more concrete, because this is really like a workbook, there's 28 days and it's 1 week at a time, and you build on it and you journal at the end, because that applies the activity more firmly, and then you do the next one that builds on the one before. But I read that leaders, the majority of leaders, like 85% or so, know that compassion's an important trait for them
Mhm.
as a leader. But like 80% of those 85% also say they don't have the slightest clue how to start being compassionate. What I know that, but when I go to work and I walk in, what do I do? How do I do compassion?
Mhm.
And it's really concrete. It says do this, do this, do this. And by doing the things that are described in these 28 ways, I think I could have always also called it 28 ways of connection,
Mhm.
or 28 ways of communication. But the connection word I really like,
Yeah.
because connection is what has people trust you, has them feel seen and heard, which everybody wants. Um, so it satisfies all that. And if you're compassionate and do all these things, then that's addressing the diversity issue and the fairness issue,
Right.
because it just naturally happens. So that's kind of how it happened. And I always, all my life, wanted to write a book eventually.
Mhm.
And I did. I got about 3/4 of the way through this and just thought, I can't do this. This is taking forever. I'll never get this done. And then I happened to have a cancer scare. I thought that I had this really bad cancer, and they were telling me I had like 4 months to live. And all I could think about, and this sounds really schmaltzy, but I thought, I've got to finish that book.
Yeah.
Got to finish the book. So um, if I told myself, if only one person reads this, then that's a drop in a lake. and it will carry on. So that's my spiel on that. I'm really proud of it, and I really believe in every single thing that's in here. And I believe that compassion is, and now I look everywhere, everybody's talking about compassion. It's the thing that will solve like 99.9% of the issues that we deal with every day. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for that. Where
Yeah,
can
it's
we
simple
get
and
your
it's
book?
free. You can get it on Amazon, or if people want to drop a note to you or to me, I'll send them a signed copy.
Nice.
Um, Either way, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's called 28 Ways of Compassion,
Awesome.
and it's called A Guide to Transformation and Leadership for Relationship-Centric Healthcare Culture. So it's geared to healthcare
Mhm.
because that's what I know the most,
Right.
but it applies to anybody,
Sure.
anybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing about that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah. The next thing I want to ask you about is what you feel like the future of work looks like for you in a post-COVID world, and do you have any upcoming projects that you're working on, or anything that you're looking to work on? What's next?
Yep. Of course, I am, was a speaker. I still am, but last year my conference speaking just kind of, it was like pulling the plug in the
Yeah.
bathtub. It just, some people switched really quickly to a virtual world, so that was good. But what I'm seeing is that I really am enjoying staying home, which
Mhm.
was, I was always out doing something. I really enjoy working from home and being in my space and being on my farm. And what I've been flipping to, I don't know about you, is more virtual, more. I just recorded an online on demand module for Zoom that people can go in and buy. It's through an agency that I
Nice.
work with. And that was
Great.
the very first time I filmed something on Zoom with me like overlaid on the slides. And again, the subject was so easy for me, but the technology was just
Right.
crazy, driving me crazy. So I see it being that way. And I see for everybody, there's going to be a lot more flexibility in terms of it's not if people can work from home anymore. It's when push came to shove, it was how.
Yeah,
And that opens things tremendously for people with disabilities.
for sure.
Seriously. But
Yes.
I think there's going to be, there already is a lot more open dialogue and flexibility. But on the other hand, my husband told me when I was getting ready for this, his company works for National Industries for the Blind. They had just leased, and it's probably a long-term lease, this beautiful set of offices down in Alexandria. And
Mm.
I'm sure there's a lot of companies out there that are going, boy, we got a lot of space sitting, wasting,
Yeah.
what do we do now?
Yeah.
So, what about you? Are you working more virtually?
I'm
Same
working
thing with your
entirely
work?
virtually.
Good.
It's been great for my business because I've had a couple clients in New York and one potential client that I'm talking to that's in Ohio. So while some of
Wonderful.
my clients are in the Bay Area where I'm located, it opens it up to, being able to work with anyone anywhere. And
Yeah.
I can do trainings like this online. I mean, webinars and things. And yeah, and I do want to hear
Yeah.
more. What's the title of your it's like a digital course that you have
Well,
now?
what it is right now, Jocelyn, is a course that this agency created for an association in North Carolina. So they
Okay.
wanted a specific module. So what it's going to be is offered to that association, but they will probably open it up and offer it to other associations that are part of that profession.
Awesome.
Um, so I tried very hard to address the profession without getting too specific. The
Mm,
module was
yep.
on, the module is actually good for anybody. It was a history of the ADA and
Oh,
a
awesome.
primer, like basically what the ADA said, what the ADAA said, and why
Hmm.
they did it, and then what the current trends and updates are
Yeah.
that we're seeing in the world of ADA and lawsuits and EEOC.
Hmm.
Uh, data I uncovered was just phenomenal. Like the #1 EEOC claims are trending as retaliation. It's like 58% of the
That's
EEOC
interesting.
claims are retaliation. And I don't
Huh.
think, probably, that's just an aside. I don't think a lot of employers are paying attention to that.
Yeah.
They're all worried about the next biggest category is people with disabilities.
Hmm.
And then from there it goes down. But people are hyper focused, which tends to happen on one area
Yeah.
where, you better make sure your managers aren't retaliating.
For sure.
Because I don't know about you, but I've seen that.
Yeah, that's an important piece when creating, harassment policy, making sure that that's very clear. What is retaliation, what things are protected,
Yes.
and then, yeah, what are the actions that can be considered retaliation? Because I think there's things people don't think about. Like if you refuse to have someone go to a training, that can be
Yes.
considered retaliation. There's so many
Yeah,
nuances to that. So yeah, that is really
definitely. And one of
interesting.
the things I've seen is in the area of exit interviews, people will do an
Mm-hmm.
exit interview, then you try to share it with the manager to get
Mm-hmm.
things changed. And all they're worried about is who said it, and then
Yeah.
drilling down on everything that they said that was negative. And that same thing happens with, they used to be called satisfaction surveys, but engagement surveys. If
Engagement
there's a
survey.
negative comment, seeking someone out and slamming them up against the wall to talk about that is retaliation
Yeah.
to a survey.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's why,
it's fascinating.
yeah, for my exit interviews, I always tried to share the data in aggregate, but you get such small, if you're in a small
Yeah,
company and there's not a lot of turnover, you kind of have to wait a while before
yeah,
you
you
can
do.
share that
You do,
feedback.
because
So,
if you go straight to the manager um, right away, they know exactly who it was.
yep. Yeah.
Hunt them down, treat them like they deserve
Yeah.
to be treated.
Yeah.
That's a big area. There's always a big area. It's the whole field is so fascinating,
Yeah.
and will never stop being fascinating because it's people
Always changing.
always.
Yeah. Well, the last question I have for you is just what if you were to describe to someone what you work on as a consultant, if they were interested in hiring you for that work, how would they contact you? Just give us a little rundown about like where people can find you online
Yeah.
and what types of things you're available
Okay.
for
I'm
hire.
okay. I do have a website, but I'm going to update it because it doesn't reflect what happened over the
Hmm,
past year and a half.
sure, sure.
I have a website. It's deeborgoyn.com, very
Okay.
creative.
Mhm.
And then I have an email. Again, it's very creative. It's d@deeborgoyn.com. And my phone number is, and people can call me anytime, it's 540-550-4699. And I am the kind of person, I'm happy to just let somebody bounce something off me. And if it helps them, then there's no commitment. But if, I ask them, but if it helps them
Mhm.
and you liked my line of thinking, they can do that. I'm on LinkedIn. Um, I'm out there. I work primarily with companies that want, um, I'm starting to work more primarily with companies that want customized training.
Mhm.
I like to do, like I did last, the last part of last year. One of the things I did was do a book club with the 28
Oh,
Ways of
nice.
Compassion. They
That's
had
awesome.
gotten the book and they had taken it to their senior leadership team, and the senior leadership team liked it. So they wanted to buy it for all of the next level.
Mm.
And but they wanted me to run the book group. So we met once a week, once of the 4 weeks that makes up the 7 days that makes the 28. So that was really fun.
Mhm.
I prefer live
Sure.
being recorded. It's it's the feedback from the group is is much more rewarding than just speaking to a camera.
Hammer. Yes, I agree.
I
Yeah.
like to know
It's
there's a
fun to
really
get that
live
interaction.
human at the other end of the line right now.
Hmm.
So
Definitely.
so that's it.
Cool. Anything you want
That's
to
me
add
in a
before we?
nutshell. No, I
Awesome.
really appreciate you reaching out to me, and I wish you all the best in your consulting and the work that you're doing. And if you ever have any issues or questions or anything you want to bounce off me about DEI, it's what I do and it's who I am because
Mhm.
it just is from the moment of birth, really. So
Yeah.
I wish you luck. It's a challenging field.
So much work to be done,
If
right?
you don't like what's going on today, just it'll change tomorrow.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, Jocelyn.
All right.